You know, I was kind of thinking through the last sermon I preached was titled Forgotten. This sermon is kind of preached Reject. I mean, Mark, what in the world are you doing anyway? I mean, what is the deal? And I must be honest, when I was beginning to plan out the fact, when I was asked to preach and I was beginning to work through this, I was in all honesty looking for something that would help us to feel good. And I thought, wow, there's got to be one that will energize us and pick us up and get us going. And what would I like? And I suddenly realized, all I'm talking about is me. What do I want? What do I feel? How am I going to get into this? And how, God, do me a favor. Help me to see what you want. And I kept bumping into John 4. For some reason, I just every time I'd turn around, I'd think about it, and it sort of expanded in my brain. So I would like to do this. As we open the new year, I'd like to go to a place that maybe most didn't realize that we're going to when we got here. But I'd like to go to a place that we all know. And I would like to address some things that we've all experienced, but at the same time, perhaps in a new way. And where I want to start is a thing called rejected. Sometimes it's just an awkward moment. I don't know if you've ever done this. It just popped in my mind a while back. Have you ever gone to the airport bathroom, right? And you've washed your hands, you're getting ready, you're dripping a little bit, and you walk over to the machine and you do that dance, and you're trying to make the towel come out, right? Hey, underneath, turning around, all this. And finally, you just get frustrated and you step back, and the guy behind you walks up, reaches to the bottom, pulls it out like that, and you hear somebody behind going, and you just, you kind of feel like a fool. I just didn't see that. and it's a minor thing, but the reality is we go through a lot of those kind of experiences. Some of them are more difficult. I can still remember in 3rd or 4th grade, actually here in Texas. And the teacher asked us, how many of you have divorced parents? And I just raised my hand and looked around the room and realized I was the only hand in the room. It changes you. How many of you have ever experienced, in my day it was called cooties. I don't know what it's called today. You're the reject. And when there's those phases of life, you're too short, you're too tall, you're too round, you're too skinny, your ears are too big, everybody else's voice is changing and you're still kind of talking like this. Some people have fuzz on their face and you couldn't grow it if you were paid. You could only put it on with a magic marker if you had to. Things like that. Maybe we've experienced rejection in other ways. Personal rejection. Friends who have left or even betrayed us. Maybe there's a marriage in the dust. Maybe family members who have turned their back on you. There are things that we go through, and sometimes too we live through a dark period of time. You got fired and thought that you were going to get a job the first year, and the second year, and you're scratching and you're scrabbling and you wonder what's wrong. Sometimes we just feel like we're on the backside of the 8 ball all our lives. We just somehow feel I missed something and I may never get it. And so I wanted to start in a difficult place because I think we all have them. And one of the things that we tend to do, I do, is we hide them. Okay? I really don't want you to see that vulnerability, that place where there's a phrase in Spanish called meter el dedo en la llaga. And it's just as harsh as it sounds. It literally means stick your finger in the wound. Like the doctor, we've all been there, right? Does this hurt? No. Does this hurt? No. Does this? Ah! Okay? And God has a funny way of doing just that. And so what I want to do is start today, I want to start the year with the fact that God doesn't do it for no reason. God is a person who genuinely has the answers. It kind of reminds me of Frodo. I don't know if you ever watched Lord of the Rings. If you haven't, watch it. It's wonderful. But there is a hero, and fairly early on in the story, he's stabbed by one of the really bad guys. and it leaves a wound in him that just never heals. And so if you brought a non-healed wound, or if you carry one with you, or maybe you hit one ahead that just threatens to be that way, I'd like to speak to you today. In fact, I'd like to speak to all of us, because here's the deal. Maybe I've had a pretty smooth sail, but maybe the person next to me or that one over there hasn't. So let's turn, if you will, to a very familiar story. Hopefully we've all heard of it before. And it is John 4, and we're going to pick up with verse. Actually, let me set this up a little bit, because it helps to understand where we're coming from. John has set up his book so that it tells stories for very special reasons. And he uses miracles to illustrate. So they're all purposeful. John is a very purpose-filled book. And if you look into the last chapter, you will stumble across a situation where Jesus is talking to a man who came to him by night, who was one of the head guns of the Pharisees. And he just had to ask Jesus in a secretive way and talk to him about who he was and what was going on. And part of that is a verse that we're all familiar with. For God so loved that he gave, and why? Whoever believes in him. Isn't that amazing? So that's the prior chapter. And now what we're going to come on to is really, those of you who may or may not know his timeline, it's really the beginning of the ministry of Jesus. And what does he do? Where does he go, and what is he about to do? So when we pick up in verses 1 through 6, what you're going to find is he decides to do something now that no man in his position would do. He is called a rabbi. And a rabbi at that time is a teacher. You can just call it a teacher, a famous teacher. And the people who follow after him are the learners, or the students, and that's the disciples. So if you want some good words, disciple is just a learner. He's a student, somebody who follows. And at that time, the place that was truly off limits for anybody who had a decent reputation was Samaria. And many of you have heard the things about it. They detested Samaria to the point that they would add 4 or 5 days in very, very difficult terrain to a journey in order not to set foot into that land. These were the people who had not only been at war with Israel from the beginning, because it had separated between Judah and Israel, Israel being the northern kingdom. And they were constantly at war because the northern kingdom set up their own gods and their own temple. And then finally Assyria came in and pulled them all out. And their way of doing things was they mixed them all up with other races and stuck them back in again. So now we have Jews and whatever. Call them mongrels if you want to. And so they were detestable to any educated Jew. And now Jesus, and it says he had to go through Samaria. For one thing, it's a lot better trip. I mean, you just straight up. But the other thing was, I think that God, again, we're talking about doing the will of God. And I think that Jesus knew that God had a plan for him to be where he was and what he was doing and where he's going. And so he goes up and he sits down at a town in the middle of Samaria called Sychar. And the ground there is what Jacob gave to his son Joseph. So this is Joseph's land, but it's called Jacob's well. So I'm just kind of setting you up in terms of where you are. And he's there at the well. He's tired from the walk that they've gone through, and it's about 6th hour, which is noon. And Samaria, particularly in the warmer months, gets up to about 90, 95, 100 degrees. So think Houston in the heat. And we're going to pick up our story there. So to start out, he's going to some place that he shouldn't be. And when you talk about this is a race that was rejected, this is their religion that was rejected, and now we'll find somebody who is rejected, and the reputation for the Samaritans as well. And picking up at 7. Now a woman of Samaria came to draw water. And anybody who understands the culture would know. We're so far away from that kind of thing. I don't know of anybody who goes outside to go to the bathroom. I don't know of anybody who goes outside to get the water. But they did. And so what you would normally do is draw your day's water in the morning. It's cooler. It's easier to do. You get to socialize. That's when the whole world, that's when you get all the gossip. And then in the evening, you would come back and just kind of get what you needed to get you through the night. So it was a quicker, easier trip. Well, in this case, this woman is coming right in the worst time. But on the other hand, there's an empty well, which for her was an advantage. Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink." For his disciples had gone away to the city to buy water, to buy food. The Samaritan woman there, now notice, the Samaritan woman said to him, "How is it that you, being a Jew, ask me for a drink since I'm a Samaritan woman?" Now, she didn't say it like that. Here's probably what she said. "How is it that you, being a Jew, ask me for water? I'm a Samaritan woman." She's counting herself out on several fronts. She understands the animosity. And she realizes not only is she a Samaritan, she's a woman. So that sticks her even farther down on the social ladder. Are you just taunting me? Are you being sarcastic? Are you treating me like your slave? What is going on? And then Jesus says, and in notes, Jews have no dealings with Samaritans. Jesus says, if you knew the gift of God and who it is that says to you, "Give me a drink," you'd have asked him, and he would have given you living water. Something happens here. You see, oftentimes the text just doesn't get, it's like texting today. How many of us understand the great dangers of texting, right? Because you don't get the emotion. You don't really know what they're thinking. Because apparently Jesus answered in such a way that it completely disarmed this woman. We were talking in the class this morning about the difference between saying hi to somebody and saying hi to somebody. It's interesting. Well, it reminded me of a story a while back about a young man who had come in from Africa back probably in the 80s. And he'd come in to speak, but first time he'd ever been to the United States, and wouldn't you know, he comes into Los Angeles, and he's speaking at one of the larger churches there. And they asked him, "What is your experience with the United States?" And he says, "Oh, it's a very high society." Oh, and they looked at him and said, "Oh, you mean better living conditions, better situation?" "Oh, no, he said. Everybody here says hi, but they don't mean anything by it. Hi, how you doing? Fine." Right? So I'm just saying, this is the way we normally act. And apparently what Jesus did first, my guess, because we have to do this all on conjecture, the first thing he did was actually looked at her. He slowed down and looked at her. And you know, just the way people look at you, a lot of times you know they care. It's the very first thing. He looked with interest. He looked at her as a person, not a Samaritan thing. He looked at her, I think, with genuine compassion. And then he said something to her that really, and notice, this is so in tune with her needs. He says to her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that says to you, 'Give me a drink,' you would have asked him and he would have given you living water." Living water is flowing water. It's what doesn't go stagnant. It's water that's always available. Now, what does that mean to her? Well, for her, remember, she's there. The reason we're going to get into, well, let's continue on. So the first thing he did is he offers her this unique, this different water. And she's standing at the well and she says to him, "Sir." Now notice the change in the way she says, "Lord." "Oh, sir." So he's just moved from being a Jew to being, "Sir, you have nothing to draw with and the well is deep. Where do you get that living water? You're not greater than Jacob, our father Jacob, are you, who gave us the well and drank of it himself and his sons and his cattle? Are you setting me up? Is this a joke? I appreciate your question, but the well is 40 feet deep. You don't have anything to pull water out with. How in the world are you going to give it? You're not billing yourself as somebody even greater than our Jacob, who gave us this well. He was kind of a central figure for them in the religion. So she's kind of coming back with a fair amount of skepticism, and I think with good reason. When somebody starts to break our emotional barriers and move into places where we're a little uncertain, what's the first thing we do? Hey, I'm not sure about all this. Are you for real? And what you're talking about is a little weird. I'm looking around, and there's no springs around here. There's no easily accessible water. What in the world are you asking about? And then he responds and says, everyone who drinks of this water shall thirst again. But whoever drinks of the well that I give him, the water that I give him, shall never thirst. The water that I give him will become in him a well of water springing up to eternal life. And the woman said, Sir, give me this water, so I will not be thirsty, nor come all the way here to draw. You gotta pay attention to the kicker. She doesn't understand what she's talking about at first. She's not saying, give me eternal life. She's saying, give me freedom from the embarrassment that I've been experiencing. Get me out of the pimple stage. Make my head grow up to my ears. Do something that will free me from bury my record. You can now expunge your records on the internet until you find out somebody saved it on their hard drive or something, Free me. She was coming to the water at the middle of the day very simply. We're going to figure out so that she didn't have to be around those other women. You probably know what it's like, okay? What would probably happen is she would show up to the well, and every other woman there would move to the opposite side. And if she took 2 steps one way, they took 2 steps away. And all the time they're looking at her, and they're sort of pointing a little bit, and they're laughing. And she just does not want to face that again. Give me that water. Get me out of this place. I'm so tired of the pain. Now, you would think at this point that Jesus' response would be, here's the way to do it. This is the plan of salvation. Okay, she's hooked, right? She's ready. And look what he says. This is amazing. What he says is this instead. He says, go get your husband and bring him here. Now, the woman answered and said, Lord, I have no husband. Jesus said to her, you're right. You have no husband. You've had 5 husbands. And the one that you're with is not your husband. We don't know whether this is man 6 or man 8, man 12. We have no idea. Okay? You've spoken the truth, finally. What? Are you not as astonished as I am? Remember that little phrase, metero dedo en llaga? Okay? He just stuck his finger into the bleeding, painful wound in this woman's heart. She was a reject. She had been manhandled literally from man to man to man to man to man until finally no one would have her. She was just hanging on by a thread. She was the town curse. She's one everybody avoided. The women, because who knows, might be going after our man. The men possibly because it might mess their reputation up. And she is saying, get me out. And notice, what she's saying is this. It's what we say today, right? Build me a safe room. Build me a safe room. Give me a place that I can go and get away from all of this. See, we live in a culture of avoidance. We live in a culture where if you get awkward for me, I cancel you. And if I become awkward for you, I get canceled. We live in a place where we hide because if they find out on the internet what's going on, I've had it. And so we just stuff and bury and hide and keep it all hidden away. And here is Jesus just ripping it open. You got to be kidding. Jesus, did anybody ever teach you how to evangelize? That's the dumbest thing I've ever seen. I want this water. Okay, lady, well, get your husband. I know you got a new husband. In fact, I know you are now at the very end of the ladder. And so he turns to her and says this, and the woman said to him, now, isn't this wonderful? He says, I perceive you're a prophet. How in the world could you possibly have known? You're not from here. In fact, you don't even normally associate with it. How did you dig so deeply? I thought that was absolutely beyond your ability to see. Our fathers worshipped in this mountain, and people say in Jerusalem, the place where men ought to come when okay, let me go back. Our fathers worshipped in this mountain, and your people say that in Jerusalem is a place where men ought to worship. Now, I'm not quite sure where she's going this as I thought about it some more. Because on the one hand, it may well be that she's using this as her cover, right? Oh, religion, let's go to religion. Anything but talk about me. But there is another possibility, and that is she's going, oh, you're a prophet, and I've been looking for this whole Messiah. I've been looking for religion that works. You know how many people there are like that? Hurt people who are just bouncing from place to place to place. Anything that looks like they might offer an answer. Counselors, churches, synagogues, doesn't matter what, any place, bars, just help me. And it may well be that she's asking that, where do you go anyway? You guys say it's Jerusalem, we say it's here. What's the word? And Jesus said, believe me, an hour is coming when neither in this mountain nor in Jerusalem shall you worship the Father. He says there's an hour coming when the issue is not the place. He says you worship what you don't know. We worship what we do know. Salvation is from the Jews. So the first thing he does is actually answer that question. You're actually going to find out that the Jews were right. That's okay. But then he says this, but an hour is coming and now is when the true worshipers shall worship the Father in spirit and truth. Okay? God is spirit. Those who worship him must worship him in spirit and truth. So what's he saying? Well, what he's saying is, hey, the hour is coming. It's simply up to you. The issue is not where do you go. The issue is what do you choose? Because there's two things that you can realize. Number one, real worship changes you on the inside. It's a spiritual issue. Real worship will transform you in your internals. However, it's not simply based on whatever you think. I know of so many places out there, if I ran into this, just between us, I was at Home Goods. My wife leads me there. I look for sale prices on candy and, let me think, cookies. They've got some good shortbread, but they're sold out now, believe me. Anyhow, I'm just saying, there are a few goodies there I get. And then I come across this plaque, and it's really pretty, and it says, just believe. I go, wow, maybe I could put that at my home. Wow, what a great Christian. And then I suddenly realized it has nothing of Christianity into it. This is Santa Claus, the Christmas monster. Just believe in Santa Claus and he'll be real. How many kids have we put to bed on that line, huh? And then one day they realize, he's my dad. See? I'm just saying, one day we realize, maybe everything I've been told isn't what I think. And so suddenly we have to rearrange our lives around this because I believe, but belief is just one element. That's the internal element. The other element is fact. Do you realize the Bible is the most factually deniable book in the world? And here's what I mean. The Bible is the easiest place where you can check and find out whether it's true or not. Pull any religious tome you want to. How many actual geographical places do they talk about? How many actual historical events do they mention? How many times do they actually point you to something that you can look up and figure out whether it's true or not? Is that really the way crucifixion works? Is this really King David that was out here? Were the Jews even in existence at that time? And do you know what has happened up to now? Bam! The Bible hits home runs every time. Even the times, you can point back 50, 100 years when they said, no way. That language doesn't exist. And then 40 years later, somebody pulls out a tablet with that language on it. God says, I'm going to give you every opportunity to verify my word. Because I don't want your belief to be based on nothing. I want your belief to be based on fact that will allow you to make that leap that says, I can trust you. So when you worship, he says, you need to worship in spirit and truth. She responds, I know Messiah is coming. He's who called Christ, and when he comes, he'll declare all of these things. We will finally know for sure. And Jesus said to her, I who speak to you am he. I am. Boom. No wonder he knew. No wonder he speaks. No wonder he is acting the way he acts. I think that just cut right through to her, the very bottom of her soul. I'm the one. And I think that is the great change. I love watching the outline go because it's funny. I'm watching out here and the eyes go. So anyhow, and now things change. Things change dramatically. What we hear now is God is time to move forward. 27. At this point, his disciples came, and they marveled. He'd been speaking with a woman. No one said, "What do you see?" The word "marveled" is probably pretty weak right here. They were awestruck. They were blown away. You got to be kidding. No way in the world. In fact, they were so blown away, all they had was open mouths and no words. You're a rabbi. Don't you understand? Don't you know what the Pharisees are going to do about this when they hear? But they couldn't say a word. Okay, so then what happens? They show up, and it says, the woman left her water pot, went to the city, and said to the men, she says, come see a man who told me all the things I've done. This is not the Christ, is it? So what's happening? The disciples show up, and the woman jets out. What is it she's doing? Notice what she does. She leaves her water pot. Why was she there in the first place? She needed water, but she found something entirely unexpected. And what does she do? She goes out in the world and she starts talking to all those people who shunned her. And notice what she says. Come see a man who told me all the things I've done. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. These are all the things you want to hide. These are all the things you don't want to hear about. Here's a man who told me, and then she does a great twist. I hope you catch it. If she had said, this is the Christ, every person in town would have gone, no way. Just started the argument right there. Instead, she goes, could this be the Christ? Hey, we got to go find out, okay? Isn't that? It is a wonderful opener because she throws the question on them. Here's a guy who knew everything about me. Could he be the Messiah? So what's going on now? And of course, we're going to scene switch, okay? They went out of the city and they're coming. So the picture is this. The well is kind of on a hill. The city's down there. And the woman goes in. And a short time later, you begin to see people coming out. Now, they're also dressed the way you dress for summer. You know, hot weather clothes, they probably got white and they're covered. But they begin to come probably boiling out of the city. In the meantime, the disciples were requesting him, saying, Rabbi, eat. But he said to them, I have food to eat you don't know about. The disciples therefore were saying to one another, what? Who in the world snuck him a sandwich? I didn't even see a tortilla there. What's going on? What in the world is happening? And Jesus said, my food is to do the will of him who sent me and to accomplish his will. I want you to look carefully at that word because it's tied to some other words in the book of John. John likes to do this. He buries landmines along the way. This one's going to explode at the very end. The word here means to do something, to accomplish it, to make it happen. It could be to pay. At the end of the book, when Jesus is hanging on the cross, he's going to use the same word again, a form of this word twice. And he's going to say, I've accomplished your will. Into your hands I commit my spirit. It's finished. It's paid in full. I believe that at the opening of Jesus' ministry, he understood exactly what it would cost to give these people what he was offering to them. He knew that as he spoke to that woman, he knew that as those people were coming out, that he would have to die for them to have the water of life. And so now he's just pointing it out to his disciples. He says, look, you've got to understand. This is what I came for. I came here because the Father sent me. I came here to do what he wants me to do. And what he wants me to do is opening here, but it will end at the cross. So now there's all these wonderful people boiling out of the city. And Jesus then turns to his disciples and he says this, do you not say there's yet 4 months and then comes a harvest? Behold, I tell you, lift up your eyes and look on the fields. Behold, they're white with harvest. He says, don't you remember? This is not harvest time, but look up and look out. It's white all over the place. Now the thing is, it's white with people. Already he who reaps is receiving wages and is gathering fruit for eternal life, for life eternal. He who sows, he who weeps can rejoice together. Now the fascinating thing here is he's saying, on the one hand, there is somebody who sowed for this harvest to take place. Who was it? The woman at the well. She was the sower. She's still probably running around the city screaming, be the man who told me everything I ever did, right? And they're still coming out, okay? So there she is running around doing the deal. And then he says, in this case, the saying is true, one sows and another reaps. I sent you to reap for that which you've not labored. Others have labored and entered into their labor. So what is he doing? He is now turning the disciples to do what they're here to do. They are now going to be speaking with all of these folks who came out and leading them to eternal life. Jesus is the answer. Jesus is the way. If you will believe in him, if you will trust him, he will open the door for you. And he says, he points out, hey, notice there are sowers and there are reapers. There's no landowner. There's nobody who plowed the field. There's nobody who prepared this work. There's nobody who actually owns the seed or who created the seed except for God himself. There's people who throw it out there. Then there's people who pick it up. And then there's God who made all the rest happen. Okay? So now what we find out is, he says, now's the work, guys. Let's pick it up. Finally, he says, Then from that city, many of the Samaritans believed him because of the work of the woman who testified. He told me all the things I'd done. And he says, many believed because of what she said. And then notice what it says. So when the Samaritans came to him, they were asking him to stay with them. He stayed with them 2 days, and many more believed. Oh, let me go back. From there, the city, many of the, behold, he told me all the things I've done. And many more believed because of his word. Here's the thing that I'm seeing here. Literally, the woman who was the town reject is now the woman who opened up the door to the whole town to become saved. Jesus, what she asked for, let me point this out. What she asked for was this: Lord, take all my shame and all my embarrassment and give me something so that I can run away. Living water, so I never have to come out and do this again. And Jesus said, wait a second. The water that I'm going to give to you is living. The problem is it bubbles up from the inside. It pours out of you. Why in the world did he peel the skin off her wound? Because he didn't want to just give her a way to put up with it. He wanted to heal it. Let me offer you a little picture. 6 months from now, a year from now. In the morning, the ladies are coming out to draw water. And in the middle of it is this lady who had been coming out alone for years. And there's another lady there helping her with her water jug. And they're talking to her, and they're talking about the things that have happened since Jesus came and the way their lives have been transformed. And they say, you know, you did it. You were the one. I remember it well, hearing you run screaming through the streets and going, I cannot believe that woman is doing that. Let me go figure it out for myself. What in the world touched her off? Jesus did. You see, here's the thing that I've come to realize. A couple of things. First thing I would simply say to you is this. Jesus doesn't want to simply bury the things that hurt. He wants to turn them into the things that heal. Do you know how Alcoholics Anonymous got started? Because 2 men came together and said, look, we don't want to hide anymore as alcoholics. Jesus is here. We believe he can change lives. So let's, rather than, because it was, I'm an alcoholic, man. There was a time you could lose everything. And instead they opened their arms, and today Alcoholics Anonymous is healing millions over the fact because people are willing to say, I'm an alcoholic. That's me. I struggle with addictions. And because people will open up and come to, I'm not saying that you go out there and, put it in the church bulletin. However, what I am saying is, you never know who needs to hear the hurt in your life so they can be healed. And here's the weird thing about it. And you get healed along with it. You never know who wants somebody to care, and simply your willingness to care about them and listen to them and look into their lives may change everything. Not only for them, for you. Now here's the other thing that's fascinating to me. You know what? The process of sowing and reaping is for all of us. All of us. What qualifications does it take to share the gospel? Well, 5 husbands and how many men you had afterwards, right? No. Anything. Anything. What does the reaping take? Now, let me suggest to you something. The reaping takes the right information. And here's the problem that many of us have. If my friend, whom I'm sitting across and she's just poured out her pain, says to me, you look like you have something that's helped, how do I get there? How many of us would go, excuse me, I need to call my pastor. Right? Okay, let me give it to you in a nutshell, real fast. This is easy. Number 1, and it's got biblical background. Romans 3:23, everybody blew it. That's the shorthand form. Everybody's blown it. Number two, when you blow it, you die. That's ouchy. But that's the truth. When you blow it, you're dead. That's Romans 6:23. God looked at this and said, I love you, but I can't handle you in the shape you're in. So he said, since you guys are all dead and could do nothing about it, I'll do it for you. Okay, Romans 5:8. God shows his love for us because while we were sinners, Christ died for us. And then finally we get to Ephesians 2:8 and 9. He says, you know what? Salvation is a gift. All you got to do is take it. But you don't have to. And in fact, if you take it, you can never say that you did something good to get there. You just take it. You just learn how to share the gospel. Every one of us is now on the hook. Right? Give it again. Romans 3:23, Romans 6:23, Romans 5:8, Ephesians 2:8 and 9. Boom. And at the same time, we're just part of the process. You never know. Maybe just sharing you don't have to lead everybody. You don't have to everybody's not going to respond. But maybe your influence, your willingness, your caring will move them a step in the right direction. The woman that went into town didn't bring anybody, didn't convert anybody. I love it when people say that. Well, I led 14 people. I go, no, you did not. God did all the work. You just got to be in the, tell me something. Can you imagine the doctor going, I just birthed that baby. Ladies, how would you feel about that? What? What? You just stood there and guided, man. I did all the work. And that may well be true. You may just be there for the birth, Don't think that you did all the work. So it's a fairly simple, straightforward situation. And like I said, I think there are two things that I want you to carry into the new year. The first thing I want you to carry is God has the answers. He's got the answer to your pain. He's got the answer to those things you are desperately trying to keep pushing underwater and they keep popping back up again. He's got the answer to the things that will go wrong tomorrow. And he wants to not simply get you out of the pain. He may well want to transform that so you turn it into a vehicle to transform lives. Secondly, he gives us the opportunity to do an amazing thing, and that is our lives will be changed as people come to Christ. I guarantee it. If you will open this up, somehow somebody will stumble in and you'll share it with them and they go, can I pray now? And you go, well, look, okay. It changes everything. See, it's participating in what God wants to do doesn't make it worse. It makes it better. And it may well be that this is the year to be astonished by Jesus Christ working through each one of us. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, I thank you because you are so incredibly good. You could have done this whole thing all by yourself. It could be just somebody stepping out of heaven, pointing a flashlight at us, and bang, those are the ones that are going to go to heaven. You didn't. You said you, and you, and you, and you are going to be involved, and I will give you rewards. Secondly, you could have left us in the lurch. You could have said just, hey, I'll get you to heaven, but you're just going to have to suffer all the way until you get there. And you didn't. Instead, you said, no, I want to bring you healing. In fact, I want to bring you the most remarkable healing of all, which is transformation. I am going to take your wound and turn it into something positive and exciting in your life.